It's white South Africans are only 7% of the total population, yet they own 72% of the farmland. So how could South Africans who are white, who are only 7%, they own 72% of all the farmland? That seems like it might have been a colonialist project at one time.
I can't imagine why.
I couldn't imagine that being the case. The legacy of colonialism and apartheid continues to shape South Africa's land ownership patterns, with the vast majority of farms and agricultural holdings still owned by white individuals and corporations. This stark racial imbalance is the direct result of centuries of land dispossession, discriminatory legislation, and unequal distribution of resources under colonial and apartheid rule. Echoes still ringing to this day. The Natives Land Act of 1913 was a pivotal piece of legislation that laid the foundation for a spatial segregation of South Africa along racial lines. It restricted black South Africans to just 7% of the country's land, while reserving the most fertile and productive areas for white ownership. This was followed by a series of other laws and commissions, such as the Glenn Gray Act and the Lagden Commission, which further entrenched the idea of native reserves and the removal of Africans from white-owned land. The consequences of these policies are still felt today. Farm workers, the majority of whom are black, continue to live under dehumanizing conditions, facing regular evictions, poor labor practices, and limited access to basic services and opportunities. Meanwhile, the wealth generated from the land has allowed white farmers to accumulate more land and resources, perpetuating the racial wealth gap. Any meaningful land reform that must address these historical injustices and prioritizes the needs and the aspiration of the farm worker and the landless, as Trevor Christians, the Secretary General of the Commercial, Steve Doring Agriculture and Allied Workers Unions, aptly states, "We will never address the dignity of farm workers if we don't get the land. The land question is non-negotiable. True reconciliation and justice in South Africa cannot be achieved without fundamental shift in land ownership patterns. The current market-based approach to land redistribution has failed to inadequately redress the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. It has done nothing to give back to what it had stole previously. A more radical rights-based approach is needed. One that recognizes deep spiritual and cultural connection that many Africans have on the land for their ancestors. As a society, they have to confront the uncomfortable truth that their wealth and prosperity was enjoyed by so many white South Africans today. It's built on the dispossession and exploitation of black South Africans. Race is something that continues to be a problem in South Africa. Racial mixing occurred at the Cape, but it was never openly accepted like in the colonies such as Brazil and Mexico. The children of the relationships between the European men and female slaves, or the Khoikhoi servants, formed the Cape-colored community. The informal sector, which provides employment and income for many of the African countries, is relatively small in South Africa. In wealthy suburbs, produce is mostly sold in supermarkets rather than by street traders. This hints at the collusion between big business and the state to maintain monopolies, which is remnant, again, of colonial economic structures. And I don't know what you know about South Africa. They also had a language that's sort of their own. You know, the Dutch language evolved into Afrikaans, which, absorbing Portuguese, Malay, and Khoikhoi words, it reflects the multicultural community around the Cape. But the Dutch did not encourage the Khoikhoi or slaves to become Christians because that would have implied equality. Okay? So, yeah, just an egregious example of how colonialism continues to affect people long, long after, hundreds of years later, or in this case, just a few decades later, after apartheid and colonialism has finally gone away in name. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll just take this opportunity to once again reiterate my open call to anyone who wants to come debate us, make the case that white genocide is happening in South Africa, and I will take either position that you want. I'll either take the position that it's not happening, or that it is, but it's awesome. Whatever people like. I don't know. But yeah, open call any right wingers or people who are scared of white genocide want to come debate us. I haven't
All you
researched
white,
it. I just don't buy into it.
yeah, all the white supremacists in the chat, let us know. No, this was something that somebody came to us and they said, we know that there is a genocide happening against white farmers in South Africa, and nobody's talking about it, and that's black people doing it, and this is just not true.
Based.
There was some fights about land, like I said before. There were some protests and scuffles like that, but nobody's not. Genocide is many, many people. Maybe a few people have died. I don't really know. But the idea that they're ethnically cleansing white people in South Africa is just, it's not true. In fact, it's been the opposite for hundreds of years. This is just another white guilt paranoia thing, right? You think, oh, they're out to get us because we've been out for them for so long. Yeah.